Have you ever felt like time stood still for a moment? That you experienced something that defied all the laws of physics we know? Today, I'm going to reveal 13 real stories, documented and verified by witnesses, that challenge our basic understanding of reality. Entire towns disappearing without a trace, computers receiving messages from the year 1546, castles built to keep something locked away, something from hell itself, men appearing from continents that don't exist, ghost ships with vanished crews. And most terrifying of all, many of these stories have physical evidence, official documents, government investigations, multiple witnesses. These are not urban legends. They are real cases that the authorities prefer to keep hidden. Prepare to question everything you thought you knew about time, space, and reality itself, because after hearing these 13 stories, you will never see the world in the same way again. Let's start with the most terrifying of all. Story number 1: The Disappeared Village of Horror Verde. The year is 1923, the region of Mato Grosso, Brazil. Dense jungle, total isolation. A small village called Horror Verde. 600 people lived there. 600 souls in a remote community that remained cut off from the rest of the world. And one day, they all disappeared. Not gradually, not one by one, all of them. At the same time, in an instant, the first to discover it were hunters passing through the area. They approached the village hoping to trade or get supplies, and what they found left them completely paralyzed. The village was empty, completely, but not abandoned. It was as if life had stopped in the middle of a normal day, coffee cups still steaming on the tables, half full. As if someone had been about to take a sip and simply vanished. Food cooking over the fire, still hot, pots bubbling, lunch half prepared. Doors open, beds unmade, clothes hanging in the sun, tools in the middle of unfinished jobs. It was as if 600 people had disappeared in the blink of an eye. No time to react, no time to scream, no time to run. The hunters entered the village cautiously, looking for survivors, looking for explanations. They found nothing, not a single body, not a drop of blood, no signs of struggle or violence, only absolute silence. And that silence was more terrifying than any battle scene. But there was something else, something that made the hunters feel an icy chill run down their spines. In the center of the village, near the main square, there was a wooden sign, newly nailed up, the letters carved deeply into the wood. It read, "There is no salvation here." In Portuguese, "Não há salvação aqui." Who wrote that message? The villagers themselves before they disappeared? Or something else? Something that wanted to warn others not to look for answers. The Brazilian authorities were alerted. They sent investigators, police, forensic experts. They combed the village. They looked for clues, any evidence of what might have happened. Theories immediately emerged. An attack by bandits? No, there were no bodies. There was no looting. All the money and valuables were still in the houses. Disease? No, epidemics don't make bodies disappear. And the coffee cups were still warm when the hunters arrived. Whatever it was, it happened in a matter of minutes, not days. Mass abduction? By whom? For what purpose? How do you kidnap 600 people without leaving a single trace? No vehicle tracks, no signs of a struggle, no witnesses. And then someone mentioned the rituals. According to some locals from neighboring villages, the inhabitants of Horror Verde practiced strange ceremonies in the nearby forest. Esoteric rituals, invocation of unknown forces. Supposedly, they believed they could open doors to other worlds, parallel dimensions, places beyond our normal reality. The most chilling theory suggests this. The night before the disappearance, the villagers performed a mass ritual. The entire village participated, 600 people in the forest, following an ancient ceremonial protocol. And it worked. They opened a portal, a crack in reality, and they crossed over, all together. But they couldn't return. The portal closed behind them, trapping them in another dimension. forever. One of the last to cross, knowing what was about to happen, left the message, "There is no salvation here." Not as a warning to the villagers, but as a warning to anyone who came after, so they wouldn't try to follow them, because there was no way back. Of course, this theory was officially dismissed, too fantastical, too impossible, but no one could offer a better explanation. The case of Hora Verde remains unsolved to this day. The village was eventually abandoned, the jungle reclaimed it, and the exact location is now difficult to find. Some adventurers have tried to locate it, following old maps, searching for the place where 600 people simply ceased to exist. But those who claim to have found it report something disturbing. The area has a strange feeling, as if the air were heavier, as if something were watching you from beyond the veil of reality. And at night, some say you can hear voices, faint, distant, as if they were coming from far, far away. The voices of 600 people trapped in another dimension, crying out to return home. But no one can help them, because no one knows how to open the portal back. Story number 2. The Messages from Dodleston. Let's leave Brazil and travel to England, to the year 1984. Ken Webster was a school teacher, a completely normal man. He lived in a small old house in the village of Dodlestone, Cheshire. And one day, his life became completely surreal. Ken had a BBC microcomputer, nothing fancy. It was a basic home computer from the 1980s. He used it mainly to prepare lessons and schoolwork. But in 1984, the computer started doing something impossible. It began receiving messages. Messages that Ken didn't write. Messages that appeared on their own when the computer was turned off. The first messages were simple. Just a few words. In strange English. Archaic. Ken thought it was a joke. Some kind of virus or someone hacking into his system. But then the messages got longer, more detailed, and completely impossible to explain. The messages claimed to come from a man named Lucas, and Lucas lived in the year 1546. Yes, 438 years in the past. Lucas explained, in his 16th century English, that he was just as confused as Ken. Suddenly, texts were appearing on his wall, written in chalk on a blackboard, words he hadn't written, and he realized that the words he wrote in chalk on his blackboard magically appeared as text in a strange box with glowing letters in the future. Ken and Lucas had unwittingly established a line of communication through time. At first, Ken didn't believe it. How could he? It's absolutely absurd. But Lucas provided details. Details about his life in 1546, about the village of Dodlestone, about the specific house where he lived. And here's where it gets fascinating. Ken investigated. He went to local historical archives. He searched for 16th century records about Dodlestone, and he found something incredible. There were records of a man named Lucas who lived at that exact location in 1546. The details Lucas had provided about his life, his family, his occupation, everything matched the historical records. How could Ken have known these details before researching? They were obscure records. They weren't in popular history books. They were buried in old parish archives. Unless Lucas was real, the communication continued for months. Ken and Lucas began having full conversations, asking questions, sharing information about their respective times. Lucas was fascinated by the future world Ken described. Technology, science, the fact that humanity had reached the moon. Ken was equally fascinated by the details of 16th century life that Lucas shared. But there was a problem. Others began to notice. Ken's friends, his girlfriend. They saw the messages pop up on the computer. They couldn't explain it. Some thought it was an elaborate hoax, that Ken had programmed the computer to generate these messages automatically. But computer experts examined the system. There was no hidden programming. There was no way the messages could be generated automatically, especially not with the detailed historical knowledge they contained. And then, the communication became stranger. Lucas began to describe how, from his perspective, the board sometimes showed images, not just text, full images, as if he could see the future. He described seeing Ken, seeing his computer, seeing the modern room with electric lights and incomprehensible technology. He was terrified. He thought he was being possessed by demons. that he was seeing visions of hell. Ken tried to calm him down, to explain that it wasn't demonic, that somehow two timelines had crossed, that they were communicating through what modern physicists would call a time tunnel. But Lucas didn't understand quantum physics. He lived in a world where magic and demons were more logical explanations than advanced science. In 1985, the messages stopped abruptly. Lucas sent one last message. He said that local priests had heard about the demonic visions in his house. They were coming to exorcise the place. He was going to destroy the slate, to burn everything that could be causing the visions. And then, silence. Ken never received any more messages from Lucas. He tried sending more messages through his computer, typing and waiting for a response. But nothing came back. The connection had been closed, permanently. Ken Webster eventually wrote a book about the experience, The Vertical Plane, documenting every message, every conversation, every strange detail. Skeptics, of course, dismissed it as a hoax, a story invented to sell books. But those who knew Ken personally say he was an honest man, not the kind of person who would invent such an elaborate story. And he certainly didn't have the detailed historical knowledge necessary to fake Lucas's messages. So what really happened? Theory number one, elaborate hoax. Ken made it all up. Somehow he researched local history deeply, programmed his computer in impossible ways, and fooled everyone for over a year. Possible, but extremely unlikely. Theory number two, real-time communication. For reasons we don't understand, the specific location of the house in Dodlestone has a temporal anomaly, a point where 1546 and 1984 slightly overlap. Lucas's slate and Ken's computer occupied the same space, but at different times, and somehow information could be transferred between them. When Lucas destroyed the slate in 1546, he broke the connection forever. Theory number three, interdimensional communication. Perhaps Lucas wasn't really in the past. He was in a parallel dimension where history unfolded very similarly to ours, but with slight differences. The communication was not through time, but through alternate realities. What makes this case so fascinating is the documentary evidence. The messages exist. They were witnessed by multiple people, and the historical details match actual records. If it's a hoax, it's the most elaborate and meticulously researched hoax in history. Or it's exactly what it appears to be, real communication across 438 years of time. And if that's possible, if it really happened, what other messages from the past or future are we missing because we're not paying attention? Story number three, Hauska Castle, the gateway to hell. Now we travel to the Czech Republic, about 47 kilometers north of Prague. There, in the middle of the forest, stands one of the strangest and most terrifying castles ever built, Hauska Castle. Built in the 13th century, around the year 1270. But here's the strange thing. Hauska Castle has no kitchen. It has no water source. It has no real defensive fortifications. It was not built for people to live in. It was not built to defend territory. It was not built for any normal practical purpose for a medieval castle. So why was it built? According to local legends, there is a terrifying reason. The castle was built over a hole, a deep pit, so deep that no one could find the bottom. The locals called it the gateway to hell, and the castle wasn't built to keep enemies out. It was built to keep something in. Legends about the hole date back centuries before the castle was built. The hole was said to be literally bottomless, an abyss that descended directly into the underworld, into the realm of demons. And at night, the locals claimed to hear sounds coming from the hole, screams, moans, voices that did not sound human. Worse still, sometimes things came out of the hole, creatures, shadows, entities that should not exist in our world. The stories tell of monsters that are half human, half beast, of figures shrouded in darkness, of demons with bat wings. The villagers were terrified. They avoided the area, especially at night. Until finally, in the 13th century, someone decided to do something about it. A local nobleman with the support of the church decided to build a castle directly over the hole, to seal it, to keep the door to hell closed. But first, they wanted to know how deep it really was. According to the most famous legend, they offered a deal to a prisoner sentenced to death. They said to him, "Go down into the hole, as deep as you can. When you want to come out, pull on the rope and we'll pull you up. If you do this, we'll pardon you and set you free." The prisoner, facing death anyway, agreed. They tied him to a long rope, a very long rope, hundreds of meters of rope, and they lowered him into the hole. He went down, and down, and down, meters, dozens of meters. The rope kept unraveling, and then, after only a few minutes, the rope began to shake violently. The prisoner was pulling frantically, wanting to get out, now, desperately. The guards pulled him up as fast as they could, and when he finally emerged from the hole, he was completely changed. His hair, which had been black when he went down minutes earlier, was now completely white, white as snow, as if he had aged decades in a matter of minutes. His face was contorted in pure terror. His eyes were empty, staring without seeing. They tried to talk to him, to ask him what he had seen down there, but he couldn't speak. He just trembled. He moaned, as if his mind had completely broken. He died 2 days later, without uttering a single coherent word about what he had seen in that hole. After that, no one else was sent down. They built the castle immediately. They sealed the hole under the castle chapel. They placed a thick stone slab over it. And they built the entire castle around that spot, specifically to keep it closed. The architecture of Hauska Castle supports this strange story. It has no external defenses, but it has incredibly thick walls on the inside, especially around the chapel, as if they wanted to keep something locked up, not keep enemies out. And there is more disturbing evidence. During World War II, the Nazis occupied Hauska Castle, and according to some accounts, they conducted experiments there. What kind of experiments? No one knows for sure. But there are rumors that they tried to open the hole, to explore what was underneath. The Nazi files on what they did at Hauska Castle disappeared after the war, or they were destroyed, or classified so deeply that no one can access them. But it is known that several Nazi soldiers who were stationed there died under mysterious circumstances, and some of the survivors emerged with severe psychological trauma, like the medieval prisoner, as if they had seen something that broke their minds. Today, Hauska Castle is a tourist attraction. You can visit it. You can walk through its corridors. You can even stand in the chapel right above where the sealed hole is supposed to be. Tour guides tell the legends with a smile, like funny stories to scare visitors. But some visitors report strange experiences, a feeling of being watched, the temperature suddenly dropping in certain rooms, unexplained sounds, and some, especially those sensitive to paranormal phenomena, claim to feel something beneath the chapel, something waiting, something that wants to get out. So what really is the hole beneath Hauska Castle? Theory number 1, it's just a deep cave, a natural geological formation. The echoes and strange acoustics made superstitious medieval people imagine demons and portals to hell. Simple, rational, boring. Theory number 2, it's a lost portal to the literal underworld, a physical connection between our world and another realm. A place where the barriers between dimensions are weak. The ancients didn't know how to close it permanently, so they did the next best thing. They built an architectural prison around it. Theory number 3, it's an interdimensional portal, not to a religious hell, but to another dimension, a place where the laws of physics are different, where entities exist that shouldn't cross over into our world. The prisoner who went down saw that other reality, and his human mind couldn't process it. It drove him mad in minutes. No one knows for sure what lies beneath Hauska Castle. The stone slab sealing the hole has never been removed, at least not publicly, and perhaps that's for the best, because if the legends are even partially true, if there really is something down there, some doors should not be opened. Some things should remain sealed forever. Story number 4, The Man from Laxaria. The year is 1851, the city of Frankfurt an der Oder, Germany. A man appears on the streets, completely disoriented, confused, looking around as if he doesn't recognize anything. The local. Police stop him. He is obviously a foreigner, possibly lost or ill. They try to talk to him, ask him his name, where he comes from, and his answer leaves them completely baffled. His name is Jofar Vorin, and he comes from a country called Laxaria, on the continent of Sakria. The officers look at each other. Laxaria, Sakria, they have never heard those names. They ask him to show them on a map. They show him maps of Europe, of Asia, of Africa, of the Americas. Jofar studies the maps with confusion. He points to approximate areas, but he insists that the names are all wrong, that the continent of Sakria is missing entirely. The officers think he is crazy, that he is delirious. Perhaps he had a psychotic episode, but Jofar doesn't act like a typical madman. He is coherent, rational. He simply describes a geography that does not exist. He speaks a language that no one can identify. It does not resemble German, French, English, Russian, Polish, or any other known European language. But, strangely, he also speaks basic German, very old-fashioned. Grammatically strange. When asked how he learned German, he replies that it is an ancient language he studied in Laxaria, a language that his people consider long dead. This is fascinating. He is saying that 19th century German is considered an ancient and dead language in his country. Does he come from the distant future? From a time when German evolved so much that the language of the 19th century sounds archaic? They ask him how he got to Frankfurt. Jofar explains that he was walking through a forest in Laxaria. He entered what he describes as a tunnel of light, a bright passage between the trees, and when he came out the other side, he was here, in this strange city, with people dressed in strange clothes, in a world he doesn't recognize. The German authorities don't know what to do with him. They can't verify his story. No one has heard of Laxaria. The place names he mentions don't exist on any map or historical record. But he doesn't seem to be a con artist either. He's not asking for money. He's not trying to sell anything. He's just confused and wants to go home. They keep him in custody, not exactly as a prisoner, more like someone under observation. Experts are called in, linguists, geographers, historians, to try to understand who this man is and where he really comes from. Linguists record his language. They try to find similarities with known languages. They find none. His language resembles no known linguistic family on Earth. Geographers try to understand his geography. Is it possible that he is describing real places with names in his own language? Some suggest that Sakria could be Australia or some landmass in the Pacific, but Jofar's descriptions do not match. And then, while the authorities are still trying to solve the mystery, Jofar disappears. One night, he simply vanishes from his guarded room. No signs of escape, no open doors or windows. One moment, he is there. The next, he is gone, as if he never existed. Exhaustive searches find no trace of him. It is as if he has evaporated into thin air. The records of his detention exist. The documents are archived. Transcripts of his interrogations are preserved. But the man himself disappeared without a trace. So who was Jofar Vorin? Theory number one. He was a highly sophisticated con artist. He invented a fantastic story. He learned a language constructed specifically to deceive people. And he escaped when the authorities were getting too close to exposing his fraud. Possible. But why? He didn't gain anything. He didn't steal. He didn't ask for money. What would be the point? Theory number two. He was a time traveler from the year 2083. Some modern researchers have noticed something fascinating. If you take the year 1851 and add 232 years, you get 2023. And 232 is a number that appears in certain theories about time cycles and dimensional resonances. Is it a coincidence, or was Jofar really from 2083, a time when German had evolved so much that the language of 1851 was considered archaic? Theory number three. He was from a parallel reality. The most intriguing. Jofar wasn't from the future. He was from another dimension, an alternate reality where the geography of Earth developed differently, where the continent of Sakria really exists, where there are countries with names like Laxaria. He walked through a natural crossing point, a place where two realities temporarily overlap, the tunnel of light, he described. And after weeks in our reality, the tunnel reopened, and Jofar was able to return to his own dimension. That's why he disappeared so mysteriously. He didn't escape. He simply returned home. The case of Jofar Vorin remains unsolved. The documents of his arrest still exist in German archives. You can read them yourself if you do enough research. But no satisfactory explanation has ever been offered. He was a man from a place that doesn't exist, who spoke a language that doesn't exist, who appeared out of nowhere and disappeared back into nowhere, and somewhere in some dimension or time. Perhaps Jofar Vorin is telling his own story about the day he got lost in a strange world, where the geography was all wrong, where people had never heard of Laxaria, and how he finally managed to get home. Story number 5. The Mystery of the Mary Celeste. The year is 1872, the Atlantic Ocean, halfway between Portugal and the Azores. The ship De Gracia is sailing its normal route when the crew notices something strange on the horizon. Another ship, sailing erratically, with no apparent control. They approach to offer assistance and discover that the ship is the Mary Celeste, a merchant brig that set sail from New York weeks earlier. They board the ship and find a scene that completely baffles them. The ship is in perfect condition. There is no damage. There are no signs of storm or battle. The cargo is intact. Valuable barrels of industrial alcohol, untouched, unstolen. There is food in the galley, clothes in the cabins, personal belongings in their place. The captain's money is in his cabin, valuables everywhere, but there is no one on board. Captain Benjamin Briggs, his wife Sarah, their 2-year-old daughter Sophia, and 7 crew members, all gone, as if they had evaporated. The only thing missing is the lifeboat. It was deployed, but there is no sign of why. The weather was calm. The ship was not sinking. There was no reason to abandon it. Investigators examined the ship meticulously, looking for clues, any evidence of what might have happened. They found nothing to explain the disappearance. There were no signs of violence, no blood, no fired weapons. There was no evidence of illness or poisoning. The captain's log ended abruptly. The last entry was routine, mentioning his position, the weather, nothing unusual, and then nothing, as if everyone had simultaneously decided to abandon ship without taking anything with them. Dozens of theories have been proposed over the years. Piracy? No, nothing was stolen. Mutiny? No, there is no evidence of conflict. Waterspout? Possibly, but the ship was intact. Alcohol vapor explosion? A popular theory. Vapors from the cargo could have caused a mini explosion that scared everyone into the lifeboat. But there is no evidence of an explosion. But there is one theory that is almost never discussed. A theory that sounds like science fiction, but would explain everything. A portal. What if the Mary Celeste sailed through a temporal or dimensional anomaly? Think about it. The physical ship, made of inorganic materials, wood, metal, canvas, passes through the portal without any problems. But living beings, made of organic matter, are affected differently. They are torn away, transported to another place, another time, another dimension. It would perfectly explain why the ship is intact but empty, why there are no signs of a struggle, why the money and cargo were not taken. Because it was not human work. It was a natural phenomenon, an anomaly in the fabric of space-time. The Atlantic has known areas of strange magnetic activity. The Bermuda Triangle, although further west, is famous for unexplained disappearances. What if there are other similar areas, points where the barrier between dimensions is thin, where temporary portals occasionally open? The Mary Celeste sailed right through one. The captain and his crew, the moment they crossed, felt something. A change, a strange sensation. They looked around. The ship seemed normal, but something was wrong, and then they realized they were being separated from the ship, as if they were ghosts passing through solid matter. They panicked. They tried to hold on, but it was useless. One by one, they vanished, absorbed by the portal, leaving the ship behind. Where did they go? No one knows. Perhaps to another time. Perhaps they appeared in the middle of the ocean in the year 1500, or in the year 2000. Confused, terrified, without a ship, and they drowned. Or perhaps to another dimension, a similar but different world, where they awoke in an alien ocean, under a strange sky, and they lived the rest of their lives in that other world, never able to return, never able to explain to anyone what had happened to them. Because who would believe them? The Mary Celeste was recovered and sold. It sailed for years afterward under different owners. But it always had a reputation. It was considered an unlucky ship, cursed. Several subsequent owners reported strange phenomena on board. Sensations of invisible presences, unexplained sounds, as if the spirits of the original crew were still trying to sail their ghost ship. The ship was finally intentionally destroyed in 1885. Its last owner crashed it into a reef as part of an insurance fraud, but the mystery of what happened to its crew in 1872 was never solved, and it never will be, because the truth lies somewhere beyond our reach. In another time, in another dimension, where Captain Briggs, his wife, his daughter, and 7 sailors are still trying to find their way home. Before continuing with the next 8 stories, I need to pause. These first 5 cases have already challenged our understanding of reality. Disappeared villages, communication across centuries, portals to hell, men from non-existent continents. Ships emptied of human life. But what comes next is even stranger. We're going to talk about houses that defy the laws of physics, of pilots who traveled 160 kilometers in 3 minutes, of soldiers who were teleported 14,000 kilometers instantly, of stone doors in Peru that supposedly lead to the world of the gods. And we're going to enter even darker territory, scientists who tried to build machines to talk to the dead, places on Earth where reality itself seems to break down, and the theory that certain psychoactive substances are literally keys to other dimensions. Which of these first 5 stories impacted you the most? Which one do you think is most likely to be real? Leave it in the comments, because I need to know if you're ready for what's coming, because the next 8 stories are going to make these first 5 seem almost normal in comparison. Let's continue. Story number 6, The House in Virginia, The Impossible Space. Imagine walking into a house, a completely normal house from the outside, maybe a little old, maybe with a certain architectural charm. But when you walk in, something is wrong. The house is bigger on the inside than on the outside, not a little bigger, not an optical illusion, significantly, impossibly bigger. This is exactly what House of Leaves, a novel by Mark Z. Danielewski published in 2000, describes, but here's the fascinating part. Danielewski claims that he based the novel on a real documentary he found. A documentary about a family in Virginia who bought a house with impossible spatial properties. The Navidson family moves into their new home. Everything seems normal at first, but one day photographer Will Navidson notices something strange. He measures the outside of the house. Then he measures the inside. The inside is about 1/4 of an inch larger than the outside. 1/4 of an inch. 0.635 centimeters. A small difference that could be attributed to measurement error. But Navidson is a professional photographer. He is used to precise measurements. He measures again, several times, with different tools. Each time the result is the same. The interior is larger than the exterior. This is physically impossible. It violates the basic laws of Euclidean geometry. But it gets worse. One day a new hallway appears, a corridor that wasn't there before. Dark, cold, stretching into the darkness. The family explores cautiously. The corridor seems endless. It continues far beyond the physical limits of the house. Eventually they find rooms, vast spaces, some larger than stadiums, all inside a house that, from the outside, appears to have only 2 floors and a basement. Exploration teams enter, with cameras, measuring equipment. Trying to map the impossible space, they find staircases that descend for miles, rooms that change configuration when you're not looking at them, hallways that randomly lengthen or shorten, and something else, something in the darkness, something that is watching them. Some explorers don't return. They get lost in the impossible labyrinth inside the house. Now, House of Leaves is fiction, officially. Danielewski says it's a novel, but he presents the story as a found manuscript, an academic analysis of a real documentary, with footnotes, references, quotes from non-existent sources. It's the presentation that makes people wonder. Is it based on something real? And it turns out there are real, albeit less dramatic, reports of houses with strange spatial properties. In the 1970s, a family in Winchester, Virginia reported similar phenomena. Their house seemed to have rooms that shouldn't fit within its exterior structure. Architects were called in. They couldn't explain it. The measurements didn't add up. The family eventually moved out. They reported feeling constantly disoriented. It was as if the house was playing with their sense of direction and space. And there is an even more documented case in England. Borley Rectory, considered the most haunted house in England, had strange spatial properties. Multiple investigators reported that the interior seemed larger than the exterior. Hallways that seemed to stretch on, staircases with more steps than they should have. Before it was destroyed by fire in 1939, dozens of people experienced these effects. So what causes these spatial anomalies? Theory number one: optical illusions and measurement errors.